Hey guys, it's Krystal Lucier here, also known as your home sweet home 519 realtor, Krystal Lee Moore, and this is Realtor Life, a fun and entertaining look at life in the trenches as a real estate professional in Ontario. I'm so happy you're here. Let's get started. So, what we're going to talk about today is pretty important. It's keeping your eye on the prize, ABL, always be learning, distancing from negativity, and getting organized. So let's jump right in. This is kind of a weird time. We're just recording this in March 2025. It's not quite the peak of the spring market. It's not quite not the spring market. There's a lot of stuff going on in people's lives. There's a climate of uncertainty. The media is having a heyday. It really is not that different from other times. But at the same time, while you're in it, it can be very, very hard to remember there's a big picture. And one of my coaches, amazing guy, he's helped me before where I will feel like I'm struggling or frustrated or kind of like I'm not doing enough. And he'll have me go back and look at my numbers from the year before and the year before at the exact same time. And oftentimes I'm kind of blown away either by how kind of if I did well in a year that when I look back a year from then, I wasn't doing great, or that our memory kind of jades things. So like when we think of a year, even when we think back onto COVID, like everything, our brains are such amazing computers. They just organize things. And sometimes reality is not the friend of the organization. So like when we think about how like, let's say we were so busy this one year, we look and maybe by March of that year, we hadn't even sold one house, right? So like it really, really depends. And you have to learn your own business too. Do you front load your business? Is it more in the fall? I know for me, fall and winter are kind of where I'm the busiest, probably because I guess I have the most business, probably because I put so much work in the winter and the spring, in the summer, but there's a delay on our business, right? Like that's how real estate works. So keeping your eye on the prize and then remembering what you're doing it all for. So depending on what you're motivated by, and this is the thing, everyone is different. So some people are very motivated by money. Some people are very motivated by family or your why. Maybe it's an award level. Maybe you just like achieving things. Maybe I know for me, like I have a really big why. Like my why includes serving the people around me and making the world a better place. But the motivation for me, the thing is that kind of hit of dopamine or endorphins you get when you achieve something that you set out to achieve. And that's why like goal writing is so important. Yes, it helps people achieve these great things, but it's the pursuit of those achievements that really changes the game. And so keeping your eye on the prize is so important. And it's also good to remember, like I remember way back when, so I'm dating myself here, but when we used to go to Turning Point with Buffini, they would have this thing, Buffini and Joe Nigo, right? So Brian Buffini and Joe Nigo were this like dynamic duo. And Joe would say, like he'd put his goals, he'd put them in his pocket on a little index card and he'd look at them several times a day because that's what he's doing it for. The one more note, one more call, one more hour, one more sale. It was always for him, it was for family, and he had these other goals, and having those in his pocket, like front of mind, was a big deal. For me, I have my vision board on my notebook, I have it on my phone, I have it on my computer, and it's a big deal because it reminds you, like, what am I doing all this for? Because it's not for one more sale. Like one more sale by itself, yeah, it's important, I guess, but it's the families that you're affecting, the livelihoods, and that piece of like amazingness you get in your heart when people know that you've worked so hard for them. It's a huge deal. And so making sure to focus on that. Then we go to ABL, always be learning. So this is kind of cool. And what's interesting, so if you followed along on my if you followed along on my Realtor Life 30-day challenge, we went through a lot of podcasts and a lot of learning. And I will say I gave myself like mini burnout. And it was a lot of information for 30 days, like over and over and over. And it was really like I needed to take a break from reading and personal growth for like 2 months after that, because it was just trying to implement all of it. But that's a lot to do. So if you did the 30-day challenge, big fan. If you're doing the 30-day challenge, might I suggest that you give yourself a little more time for play and fun, or do it only on weekdays or something? Because I really think there's a lot to learn, and always be learning is important, but you have to have time to implement, which is kind of a theme that I've had over and over all the time. In my Always Be Learning, though, I'm reading this really cool book by a realtor I've met in person, which is cool, Faisal Susawala. So his book is called The Real Deal, and he was the #1 realtor in Remax. And I don't know if it was Remax in the world or Remax Canada, but I think if you're the #1 anything anywhere, yay you. That's amazing. And so it's kind of cool. Right now I'm just a few chapters in, learning about his like kind of his foundations, and he kind of lives by 8 words, which are do the right thing, do a good job. And that really resonates, right? Like that's a huge deal. And so I think a big piece of the entire industry, when we look at it, do the right thing, do a good job, like that kind of sums up what you need to do to be successful for the long run. Because I mean, as people who worked and were successful only in COVID would be quick to tell you, you could do well for a short time in real estate by not doing the right thing and not doing a good job. Is that how you should do it? Absolutely not. And it's not sustainable. It's like we have rules and regulations, we have RICO, like there's tons of different things, but ultimately, and reputation, like it's not worth it. You should always do the right thing and do a good job. Thank you, Faisal Susawala. And yeah, so pretty good book. Thank you to my friend Craig Finman out in Edmonton. If you need a realtor referral in Edmonton, Craig's amazing. And really like such a great person in our community of realtors. He runs a lot of really cool groups and challenges. And yeah, he's a good guy. I'm happy to call him a friend. But he suggested Faisal's book, and I'm not disappointed. So thank you, Craig, and thank you, Faisal, for writing it. Okay, so part of the Always Be Learning, we also have ongoing education. So regardless of what your thoughts are, whether you're still like going to travel in the US or not, right now our dollar's not crushing it. So I've been looking at a lot more Canadian opportunity for like a lot more opportunity or many more opportunities in Canada. So I'm going to the Buffini & Company 2-day, I want to say coaching summit. I did sign up for it. I think it's a coaching summit, April 1st and 2nd in Toronto. But then there's Richard Robbins things, and I believe Kathleen Black has some stuff. There's also a lot you can do virtually. I think as long as you're giving yourself time in between to implement. I know you can do Tony Robbins stuff, and you can do it virtually. The key with a virtual conference is that you can't watch it on TV or while you're doing anything else. So if you have like a room, even if it's an iPad, but if you have a room with a TV and you can make it dark in there, and pretend, like willing suspension of belief, pretend that you are not in your house, and just go all out and participate. That's the way to make it real. If, however, you throw it on while you're doing a bunch of stuff or doing your laundry or your whatever, that's not great. But I've been able to successfully do a few virtual conferences and seminars, and that's the key. You write down and you just You lock in and pretend like you're there, and you get distractions out of there. So now, distancing from negativity. Oh boy, guys. Okay, so this is a tough one. It's absolutely a tough one. Right now, it is rough waters out there, and you don't always know when it's going to happen. Like on a regular day, we might have some negativity. What I'm finding is that if you are like me, and I don't know how many of you are like me, but if you're like me, you kind of feel energies. So you're going to put your best foot forward. And what we always want, what does everyone want? To be able to be yourself and be accepted, right? Not fit in, but be accepted. You don't want people judging you just for being yourself, because that's kind of BS. And if you're judging someone for being themselves, unless they're really, really negative, I don't know what the answer is. But the key here is, when we're going about our day-to-day, we're going to run into people or things that are kind of toxic. For whatever reason, they get it in their head that it's okay to talk to people or treat people a certain way. It's never okay to talk to people or treat people a certain way. Like being rude to people, being aggressive, being bossy, whatever it is, it's not necessary. I'll give you 2 examples. So one example, I was helping someone with something, and it was a colleague, like not a close colleague, but just helping. And in my effort to kind of help, I misspoke. I said something like I thought they were doing something on a certain day and they were doing something else that day. Like it had nothing to do with me. But it wasn't relevant to me, and I really wasn't part of it. They got really mad at me for not remembering what they were supposed to be doing. And here's the thing. And I'm sure we've all had this, where someone reacts like really weird, like really out of proportion with what's happened. Here's what I'm learning. It's definitely not about you. It's not about you. They're upset about something else, and you're kind of just bearing the brunt of it. And that sucks, but this is where we want to try and have some grace. You do not need to stay in that situation. You do not need to stay around that person, but you also don't need to carry it with you. So if you're upset with someone because they did something or they reacted poorly, just try to let it go. It's not serving you. There's actually a really cool, I want to say a parable, but I always get this wrong. There is a saying about how holding a grudge or holding resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person is harmed, right? Like someone might not even know that you're upset with them. And even if they did, would they care? Is it helping anybody at all? So probably not. And then the other thing is, if you are in business, and this is very important, if you're in business and you are an entrepreneur and you are running a business, the only person in charge of reaching out to the customer is you. It is not the customer's job to reach out to you. It is not the customer's job to chase you down. It is not the customer's job to try and get your service or your product or whatever it is. It's your job. And the thing is, when you're a customer, it's the other person's job. It's the salesperson's job. And so as a realtor, this is for me 15 years in, it is my job. So if I send you another realtor, a client, it's not the client's job to call you. It's your job to call the client. And so oftentimes I'll kind of run into situations where I'll send a referral or something, and the answer will come back when I check in, oh, the client never called. And so I think it's important that we set the expectation with our colleagues, because it's important that they know that we expect them to call. But that's what happens kind of when you're sometimes when we get into something for so long, we expect everyone to know the same things we know, and that's not fair either. So set the expectation, but in general, if you are a professional, you should be reaching out. And you should make sure that when you reach out, the experience you're giving each person is wonderful. Like a wonderful experience, a VIP experience. And I recently saw something. I'm trying to remember what it is right now. I don't remember what it is right now. But it was all about the experience. Like the goal was, if someone is going to kind of deal with you, work with you, whatever, you want them to feel like a VIP. You want them to feel like this is the best experience of my life. And it's not that hard, right? Like there's a really cool book that you can read called Unreasonable Hospitality. And I think there's another one about the Starbucks company. It's not about the coffee. It's always about service. And there's a quote, people will often forget what you did, and they might forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I want to say Maya Angelou, but someone can fact check that for me later. But it's important. And so when we're given the opportunity to talk to someone at any point in your day, you have two choices, right? Like you can be the person that kind of brings negativity, brings an attitude, thinks that everything should be done for you, or you can just take the high road. You can be the person that says, hey, what can I do? How can I serve you? How can I make your experience so good that you want to tell all your friends and all your colleagues and all your contacts how wonderful this experience was? And I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? Like when you look at when you look at the idea of the referral business, that's what we're all doing. We're all trying to get this amazing repeat and referral business. But you get that from the making sure the experience is amazing. And that looks different for everyone. Like sometimes that will mean, I know there's a buyer agent in town where they'll take people on a special bus to go see houses. And I think that's fantastic. I really do. I don't feel authentic about that for me, but I think if that's your jam, do it. Especially have fun, blast some tunes. Same thing, one of my colleagues ended up doing this really cool thing where she turned an open house. It was right around the Barbie movie, and she turned an open house and her advertising into this Barbie dream house theme, and it was really cool. So you can have a lot of fun with it, and you don't need to buy into the negative. If someone around you is treating you negatively, you don't need to be mad at them. Just you don't need to be around them either. And so I think that's important because it just circles back to what we were talking about before, which is just that keeping your mind clear and happy and keeping your mental health in check. These are all really important because as an entrepreneur, that's what you have. That is your main thing. You have your mind and you have your motivation, and you just don't want to burn out. But you want to do a great job. You want to be proud of the work you do and be happy to do it. So, yeah. Then the last thing, get organized. So it can be really tough, especially I think we're in a world where because of our smartphones and our aggressive multitasking, everyone is struggling to stay focused. And I mean, if you're not struggling to stay focused, then you don't have to listen to the rest of this podcast. But for the rest of us, it can be tough. So what I often do, I have a notebook, and I go old school. I have a Hilroy small notebook, not small, medium size. But every single day I write the date, and then I write my personal goals on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side, all my business goals. And then I get to check them off or highlight them, which, by the way, gives me another hit of dopamine and the endorphins of getting things done. But it's so much better than trying to keep it all in your head. It's just, you could never remember everything in your head. We've also started using Monday.com, which I'm actually really liking because we have a team. It's myself and then Mina Nguyen and our assistant, Cindy Stevenson. And kind of in trying to figure out the best way to organize, we do use a spreadsheet, like a transaction spreadsheet, but Monday.com is actually quite helpful because we can just put tasks in there for each other. And then we also have all of our clients in there, so it's not a big mystery. For our database, we use Referral Maker. Shout out to Buffini. It is amazing. It's everything that everyone would want in a database manager. And I feel like those tools are fantastic. Again, with any tool, it's only as good as the user. So if you're not using it, it's not a miracle. It's not going to do it for you. But at the same time, it is amazing. So get organized for sure. I do a weekly update to my coach. So I literally check in on all of my goals and all of my numbers. And I think as a business owner, you have to do that. If you're going to take your business seriously, you want to know your numbers, know how many sales you have. You want to know your ratios, how many days it takes to close a house, what your average commission is from a listing or from a sale. These are all important, and sometimes we forget that because oftentimes we get busy. We forget that we're the owner and the employee. We're both. So yeah, and then if you're ever struggling to focus, there are some very cool on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever you listen to, alpha brainwave music. It's like, I don't know what it obviously stimulates your alpha brainwaves, I guess, but it's just, you put it on the background and it helps you focus. So pro tip, alpha brainwaves. So that is it, guys. So keep your eye on the prize, always be learning, distance from negativity, and get organized. This is Krystal Lee-Lucier, also known as your Home Sweet Home 519 Realtor, Krystal Lee Moore. This is Realtor Life, and I'm so happy you're here today. Have a great day, guys, and we will see you soon. P.S. Stay tuned for our next podcast interview, which is with Lena Merchant of Hard Rock Hotel, and it's coming up next week. Very, very exciting.